This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
What's up, everybody? Good evening, happy June, and welcome into your Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. I'm Michelle Montaine, that's Andrew Cely, and I would say happy June because it is June 1st, but like June this time last year, much happier.
To an extent. We at least had one of the teams moving on last year. This year, we only had one to cheer for this time of year. And granted, I'm always a little bit shocked. I don't know how you feel about it. At the drop-off, once we get past the conference finals and everything, it feels like everything just kind of stalls.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting for these championships to finally kick off. But excited to get some of those going at least. Wish the Stars were a part of them.
I wish they were.
But we got a lot to dissect with what went wrong in Game 5 in the entire Western Conference Final Series. So let's get right into it with what's on the show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
For the third straight season, the Star season comes to an end of the Western Conference Final. We'll break down what went wrong, including a jarring decision from Pete DeBoer surrounding Jake Ottinger and net. We'll also examine the role time and history play in how a team is remembered. More on that a little bit later on. Plus, it's the return of the top five with a look at the top five missing championships in DFW sports history. That's what's on the show, Michelle. Now, who's on the show?
Well, you are stuck with us here in the studio, but we are so happy to be joined by the host of the Hardline on the Ticket, Bob Sturm, or is it Bobby Sturm? Bobby?
Yeah, my mom would agree with you for sure.
Oh, Mom
If I get in trouble. Actually, online, if someone's being exceptionally condescending towards me, they will call me Bobby, thinking that will anger me. But it just brings back the warm and fuzzy feelings of my youth.
It's endearing. You know what isn't endearing? The Stars losing in the Western Conference Final for the third straight year, and for the second straight year to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, in my very unofficial opinion, Bob, I think that you might be the best Stars tweeter out there on the internet.
Most positive.
Most entertaining, that's for sure. But as you lived through this for the third straight year, and really in more of a deja vu way in this 2025 edition, what sticks out to you about why the Stars couldn't get through Edmonton yet again?
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, it's a little different, but in many respects, it's exactly the same, where you go through the season and you see, like Las Vegas is saying, and not the team, but the casinos are saying, the Stars are the favorite to win the Stanley Cup now, and boy, aren't they great. They might be the best team in the NHL, and you're watching them, and you're like, yeah, but what happens if they have to play Connor McDavid for 2 weeks? and he brings all of his friends. What happens then? Are our best players good enough to deal with their best players? And that's really what it boils down to this time of year. I hate to say it's like basketball when you get deep into the playoffs, but this did feel like, well, what happens if you run into like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen? And we now find out again for the third straight year is that the Stars' best players kind of stop scoring. And, once you go down that path and their guys continue to do what they do, which is dominate no matter what you try, well, now you're up a creek without a paddle. So it's unfortunate, but I also don't feel, when you get your heart broken in sports, and I've had it happen a few times, as we all have, usually the best heartbreak is when you are sure you were the best team and you did something dumb to let it get away. I want to say, with all due respect to our Dallas Stars, they weren't the best team. They don't deserve the Stanley Cup. I love them. I wish they did. But in the end, they ran into a better team again, and that stinks. But it's also what's supposed to happen in a 7-game series, right?
Right. And let's get into the decision that kind of will forever mar the later part of the series in Game 5 specifically. 2 goals on 2 shots. That was enough for Pete DeBoer to pull Jake Ottinger. And I think the question through most of our minds was, okay, fine. If it gets away from you early, there's no harm in leaving DeSmith in there. It tightened up. They scored late in the first period to make it 3-1. It was 3-2. That game might be different if Ottinger stays in net and you just let him ride it out. Bob, your thoughts on the decision to pull him and what that means moving forward for this team?
Yeah, my thoughts were I didn't like it. I thought the 2 goals that Ottinger allowed were basically defensive breakdowns that didn't have just a whole lot to do with him. And so it felt like something bigger, which, by the way, by the post-game press conference, Pete DeBoer basically told us, hey, guys, it's something bigger than today. This has been going on for 2 years, and essentially you do get the dynamic And we see this all the time in the NFL with a coach and quarterback. Heck, we saw it with Sean McVay and Jared Goff. We saw it with Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan. We've seen this a million times where a guy has a team he thinks can win the title, but the quarterback is holding him back. It's very possible Pete DeBoer thinks this is a Stanley Cup winning team and that Jake Ottinger is holding him back. I don't know if that's true. In fact, I tend to believe it's not, given the fact that the Stars scored 2 goals in 3 games between games 1 and 5. Those 3 games in the middle, which lost you the series, you scored twice. Not twice a game, twice. So to put all that on your goalie is insane to me, and I love Pete DeBoer. Then to not put Ottinger back in like in the first intermission when it's 3-1, that also seemed pretty insane to me. And then, of course, to triple down in the post game and basically back over him with a bus was the third. And I, if the Stars had a little more hair trigger owner or a little bit more quick to anger GM, it's possible Pete DeBoer has been fired this weekend. But it seems they're very stable as an organization. I think that usually serves them well. They don't make decisions when they're mad, and it appears they are, keeping a smart perspective that it's so darn hard to make a Final Four in this sport or in any sport, and then they've done it 3 straight years. So do you really want to blow that up? Can you find a better coach than Pete DeBoer? If the answers are no, then let's just proceed and keep chipping away, and maybe next year you figure out the magic formula, or maybe Connor McDavid retires. Who knows? I mean,
that seems a little premature. It seems a little premature.
It does, yes.
I have to say, I was shocked by his post-game comments about Jake Ottinger, especially given the fact that he was a huge part as to why they even advanced to that point this postseason. Right. But I do have to ask your thoughts on the fact that in yesterday's end-of-season media availability, he was asked, that is Pete DeBoer, on how the conversation went with Jake Ottinger, following Thursday night's loss. And the fact that they hadn't spoken spoke volumes to me. So your take on the fact that he hadn't had a conversation with him, especially given what he said about him publicly post-game following Game 5.
Yeah, I found that crazy as well. It's wild. Maybe they all thought we need to cool off as well. But then they're all in there doing their end of season meetings, and I always think that's interesting in all these sports that they basically meet the next morning, so there isn't really a cooling off. So the idea that he'll meet the media for a goodbye and have yet to speak to Ottinger, it's wild. And it sounds like they both really have thick skin. It sounds like Ottinger said all the right things. But a guy like me has to wonder what happens next year in the playoffs when you draw the Edmonton Oilers again. And the first thing everyone does is say, wait a minute, didn't you just say like a year ago that you don't think this goalie gives you a great chance to beat these guys? And I don't know. I mean, Pete DeBoer's won a lot of games in this league and a lot of series. He's been on the right side of the playoff handshake line the 4th most times in hockey history. Now, that's impressive. Of course, it's also should be noted that the other 9 guys in the top 10 list of most winning handshakes have all won Stanley Cups, and he hasn't. So there's good and bad to that stat. But that was crazy to me, Michelle. I couldn't believe it.
That makes 3 of us, I think.
Yeah, seriously. And you mentioned it. Titles do change how people are remembered in history. And we'll get into that a little bit more coming up on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, talking about how teams are remembered as history progresses. Stay with us.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
The Rangers' offense once again fizzled and... Wait, what? They won? Texas takes down the Cardinals 8-1 at home, earning their first series win since May 14th. Next up, a 9-game road trip starting in Tampa on Tuesday. And Scotty Scheffler is on top again, winning the Memorial Tournament at 10 under. This is his 3rd win in the last 4 PGA starts. Unironically, I think Scotty Scheffler is a good transition into what we're about to talk to, because a couple weeks ago when he won the PGA, we all kind of had to steel ourselves like, oh, right, he's only won 3 majors. Like, he's still got a ways to go before we anoint him as the next. And we're so quick to say, hey, this person is the next guy, he's going to reach this plateau. And we're also so quick to dismiss teams that have been close for a while and haven't broken through yet, which brings me to, Bob, an article you posted to try and assuage Stars fans' fears, I believe ahead of Game 4 or Game 5, I'm forgetting which one, but kind of set the table on not everyone is remembered as the way that they should be, and sometimes that's just the way history goes. Can you kind of break that down for us real quick?
Yeah. It starts with the general premise that I think the industry I've worked in my entire life is kind of corny, in that we basically watch sports all the time, and then we reduce guys to how many trophies they hold, and if they never hold any trophies, we basically say they stink or they don't know what they're doing. And I just think that's so ridiculously reductive and horrendous. And I won't stand for it, doggone it. And so it wasn't really to say that, hey, don't worry, the Stars are going to figure this out. It was more to say that the journey for these athletes, and in particular, Jamie Benn comes to mind, Pete DeBoer comes to mind, Jake Ottinger comes to mind, but also so does Dak Prescott, so does Tony Romo, so does Dirk Nowitzki. You just go down the list of all the guys who have entertained us over the years. And like Dirk has a statue, and Madonna has a statue, but Tony Romo doesn't. So does that necessarily mean he's not in their class? Well, in our head it does, because they won a title, he didn't. And so I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. I'm here to say that an athlete's journey is so interesting. And so I basically recently have been very interested in the 1975 Dallas Cowboys. So I know how to party is really the truth to this, but it's the 50-year anniversary of the 1975 Cowboys this year. And so I started going through the Dallas Morning News archives, and just sort of the day by day of the Dallas Cowboys year from 50 years ago, because I was 2 and I don't really know the story, and I wasn't living here, and I couldn't read very well when I was 2 as well. So I just go through the newspaper, and this week, 50 years ago, there was an awesome column in the Morning News about Roger Staubach. And Roger Staubach obviously is Captain America. Like Nolan Ryan, his name is absolutely unassailable. You can't question him. You're not even allowed to mention his name when you talk about Dak Prescott and Tony Romo. That's how great Roger is. He won 2 Super Bowls, and he fought for our country. So he's absolutely a guy you cannot question. But this story 50 years ago in the Morning News was kind of questioning him. It had been 3 years since they won the Super Bowl. He had been injured.
That's it?
Last year.
3?
Yeah, right. Last year, he threw 10 interceptions in the first 4 games, and they lost, I think, all of them. So now he's 32, guys, so he's over the hill. And they're really questioning whether Rodgers played his best football, and what can we do to try to get Roger going again. And it's kind of funny because in 1974, they missed the playoffs for the one time in about 20 straight years. and so you miss the playoffs one time, now everybody's saying, you stink. So it's really, I wrote about it, and I'm probably not making it very succinct here, but it's just a story about how complicated winning is. And in our memory, we're like, oh, Dirk won it all. But our memory sort of glosses over all the years that he tried but failed. And that's really what sports is trying, failing, learning. Don't give in and keep trying, and just stay on that journey. And maybe it turns out well, maybe it doesn't, but it's that infinite resistance to surrender is kind of what I love about these athletes we watch. So without going on and on, I tried to tell the story on a 50-year-old column of Roger Staubach to sort of explain, people who are just sick of seeing Dak, and they can never win when Dak is here. Well, you don't know. That's the beauty of sports.
If you're lucky enough to be watching UDSS, you just got a behind the paywall version of what Bob talked about. Now, I have to ask you, you mentioned a couple players that are currently playing, Jamie Benn, Dak Prescott. Is there any athlete in DFW history that you think kind of exemplifies being exactly what you're talking about? A guy who had a lot of success but never won a title, so is basically a tier below the others? I mean, I know you referenced Tony Romo, but is he like the one, or is there another guy that jumps out?
No, I think there's probably quite a few. I mean, honestly, unfortunately, Luka Doncic will be on that list, but Michael Young comes to mind. Pudge Rodriguez here. I know he won with the Marlins, but I mean, there's a lot of Rangers heroes that when they won in 2023, I'm sure they felt good, but they also thought, doggone, I thought I was going to be the guy to win the World Series for the Rangers. And all those Dallas Stars, I mean, yeah, Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, that whole era, they did so much winning, but it kind of looks like they may never win. And so, you visit every sport, and yeah, Romo and Witten and DeMarcus Ware, and I mean, those guys are Hall of Famers. And so, when I see the daytime national cable shows kind of reduce guys because they don't have that many rings, it's crazy. First of all, if you get one ring, you are a champion. And that's why I push back when somebody says, well, Dirk only has one, or Aaron Rodgers only has one, or whoever.
Right.
And I'm like, that's like saying somebody only climbed Mount Everest one time. They only walked on the moon once. I mean, okay, yeah, but they did. So let's not get into just ring counting all the time. That's pretty silly to me.
Yeah, it seems a little reductive to go that far. And I agree, and some sports get a little bit, like you can argue basketball might be more relevant. Either way, it's tough to reduce an entire career down to whether or not, as you said, they summited Everest. And coming up in a little bit here, exploring the top 5 teams in DFW sports history that didn't. Stay with us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
And now it's time for the top 5.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Time now for the top 5 with a special look at the top 5 missing championships in DFW sports history. Obviously, we're talking about this because of the Stars, but I'm holding off on putting this recent group on the list for now. We'll see if they make it or not. This list will be ordered predominantly by how much missing out on the title affected the team's city and their legacies. Let's start out with number 5, one that probably doesn't hurt as much. The 1994 Cowboys, the first team post-Jimmy Johnson, let one get away at Candlestick in the NFC Championship game. Third straight meeting between the Niners and Cowboys produced another classic that was decided by a controversial no call between Deion Sanders and Michael Irvin. Had Dallas won, we'd probably be talking about a four-peat. Instead, it's the one for the 90s that got away and still angers Cowboys fans around here. But it's 5 because the 90s Cowboys were a dynasty. At number 4, Dez dropped it. All right, jokes aside, the divisional round has been a house of horrors for the modern-day Cowboys, and the best team in the Tony Romo era had the Packers on the ropes in Lambeau. But Dallas lost an early lead, trailed 26-21 with just under 5 minutes left in the game, and on 4th down, Romo found Bryant for a deep ball, but the ball hit the ground before Dez completed the process of the catch, igniting a firestorm of Cowboys fans' fury that ignores that there was still 5 minutes left in the game and the Cowboys never touched the ball again. Still, doesn't take away the sting away from Romo's toughest loss, and the Cowboys had already won in Seattle earlier that year, so you might have penciled them in for a title that year. At number 3, this one was traumatic for Mavs fans, and it did involve a trade. 2006 Dallas Mavericks had all the makings of a championship team. Nowitzki in his prime, check. Breaking through and defeating their championship-level rivals in a 7-game series. In San Antonio, check. Defeating your old point guard, Steve Nash, in the Western Conference Finals, check. And home court advantage in the finals. Everything was there, and then officials, free throws, and Dwayne Wade got in the way of a storybook run. We'll always have 2011, but it's only sweet because 06 happened. At number 2, Roger Staubach didn't lose, he just ran out of time. Super Bowl 13 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, absolute barn burner. Both franchises had 2 Super Bowl championships to their name heading in, so this was for domination of the decade. 66 total points scored. All Cowboys fans can think about is the 4 they didn't score because Jackie Smith is still the sickest man in America, dropping a would-be touchdown pass that would have changed the complexion of the game. Instead, the Steelers won 4 titles in the 70s, and the Cowboys didn't make it back to another Super Bowl until their dynasty in the 90s. And at number 1, this is the one that I think most everyone in DFW wanted. The Texas Rangers in 2011. After making it to their first World Series in 2010, this was their moment. 1 strike away from that first title twice. They couldn't close the deal against the Cardinals in Game 6, ended up losing in 7. 2023 felt good because of those close calls, but the close calls still happened, and we wish we saw this team hoisting it all. Guys, that's the top 5. Bob, I'll open it up to you. Your first thoughts.
No, I love your list. It's a great study. I would say the 81 Cowboys come to mind with the Dwight Clark catch. I think the 2000 Dallas Stars, when they lost to the New Jersey Devils in the finals, just kind of ran out of gas, but they were good enough to go back-to-back. And the 2010 Rangers never get mentioned, probably because the Giants smoked them pretty good in the World Series. But I love that team with Cliff Lee and just the first time they won the pennant. So I think your list is great, and I just wanted to throw those 3 teams in there too.
Real quick on the Niners one, because I grew up watching the catch. It took me 10 years of seeing that play to learn that Dallas actually had a possession afterward. So that's just another example of how history changes the course of how you view certain plays. Michelle, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you nailed it with number one, especially given the fact that we're just coming off of this Cardinals-Rangers series this season. They talked about that game or that series multiple times throughout this three-game stretch to get so close, like to be in that predicament. The number of times that they were, it's crazy. And so I don't think anything in DFW could ever top that.
It's tough to be that close and not get over the edge. The question now is, though, do you put this Stars core on this list? I feel like there's an argument to be said that when you're this close 3 straight years, that they should be, Bob.
Yeah, to me, I'll go back to, I just think Edmonton's better. And if you can say, I just think another team's better, then it's tough to say, this is a championship that got away. So I would leave them off the list personally.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way, and a lot of that has to do with just the guys that they played.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's how it works. Bob, thank you so much for joining us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. We really appreciate it. Coming up next,
always fun.
We are wrapping up with Michelle's final take. We were just so close the last couple of years to having the Stars back-to-back, having the Mavs be relevant. Instead, we're talking about a trade. And once again, the Stars coming up short. I really need to get a jar for Luka Doncic's references just on this show because it's getting tiresome. Like, we got to at least keep track of it at this point.
And at least make some money off of it, right?
Sure, that'd be good.
That's what the jar is for.
I was going to say, do I get the money afterward?
Sure.
I get a tip. Imagine that. All right, Michelle's final take.
After the way that the Stars lost in Game 5 and the fact that they lost to Edmonton for the second straight year in the Western Conference Final, so much has been made about Jake Oettinger, the goaltender, getting pulled and his performance through really those 4 straight losses. But you also have to consider that the offense has to play its part as well. Think about guys like Matt Duchene, Wyatt Johnston. They both were 30-plus goal scorers during the regular season, and they combined for 5 goals through this series against Edmonton and the rest of the guys they played in the postseason. So, Andrew, when we think about what it takes to get to the Stanley Cup final, it takes more than just a really good goaltender.
100%. Wyatt Johnston's been on a pace for McDavid. Like, he's been that early on. He needs to develop into that if they're going to get over that hurdle. That's just the raw truth of it.
More to look forward to in the future, right? That does it for us on the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.